A very warm good morning to everyone present here today. We, the students of IIIT-B, would like to welcome one and all to the 6th edition of the Ramanujan Math and IT Conference. Srinivas Ramanujan is a person who does not really need an introduction. He's a genius in every sense of the word, as many will say. He made extraordinary contributions to the field of mathematics, including fields such as mathematical analysis, number theory, infinite series, and continued fractions. And he did all this without having any proper formal training in mathematics. Despite living in an age that was cut short by illness, he made more contributions to the field than most of us would make in a lifetime. It is in his honor that we have named this conference after him. And it gives me great pleasure to welcome you all to this conference. Through this conference, we are trying to do one major thing. We're trying to bring people who are pure and applied mathematicians together with people from the information technology industry. Because it has been noticed by us that things in mathematics such as convex functions, convex analysis, number theory, and advanced mathematical techniques have come more into the realm of information technology, and computational techniques have slowly become mainstream in mathematics. As such, we hope this brings together a melting pot of people of different kinds and brings about a rise of ideas among them. Again, once more, I'd like to welcome all of you to the 6th edition of this conference. In many cultures, light symbolizes knowledge. And just like light removes darkness, knowledge removes ignorance. So to start off, I would like to request our director to please come forth on the dais and light the symbol of light.
Manisha and Rosanna.
I would now like to request the students of IIIT-B to present a small song.
गणनायकाय गणदेवताय गणाध्यक्षाय धीमहि गुणशरीराय गुणमण्डिताय गुणेशानाय धीमहि गुणातीताय गुणाधीशाय गुणप्रविष्टाय धीमहि एकदन्ताय वक्रतुण्डाय गौरीतनयाय धीमहि गजेशानाय भालचन्द्राय श्रीगणेशाय धीमहि एकदन्ताय वक्रतुण्डाय गौरीतनयाय धीमहि गजेशानाय भालचन्द्राय श्रीगणेशाय धीमहि गानचतुराय गानप्राणाय गानान्तरात्मने गानोत्सुकाय गानमत्ताय गानोत्सुकमनसे गुरुपूजिताय गुरुदेवताय गुरुकुलस्थायिने गुरुविक्रमाय गुह्यप्रवराय गुरुवे गुणगुरुवे गुरुदैत्यफलक्षेत्रे गुरुधर्मसराराध्याय गुरुपुत्र भरित्रात्रे गुरुपाखण्ड खण्डकाय गीतसाराय गीततत्त्वाय गीतगोत्राय धीमहि गूढगुल्फाय गन्धमत्ताय गोजयप्रदाय धीमहि गुणातीताय गुणाधीशाय गुणप्रविष्टाय धीमहि एकदन्ताय वक्रतुण्डाय गौरीतनयाय धीमहि गजेशानाय भालचन्द्राय श्रीगणेशाय धीमहि एकदन्ताय वक्रतुण्डाय गौरीतनयाय धीमहि गजेशानाय भालचन्द्राय श्रीगणेशाय धीमहि
Thank you so much for the refreshing start for the day. Rajat, Satvik, Monica, Sumit and Anusha, all students at IIIT-Bangalore. To formally kick off events, I would like to request our director, Professor S. Gopin, to say a few words on the occasion.
Good morning. Okay. So let me first welcome you all, particularly our distinguished guests from outside, to the 6th edition of the RMIT conference. And it is kind of nice of Prasanna to continue to kind of have the energy to kind of keep doing it, and Prasanna keep doing it. And it is nice that Manisha, who joined us 2 years back, she has also been there with this conference.
He is the primary one now.
Okay, this year it is all Manisha. You have handed over charge. That's good. Okay, let me kind of roll back a little bit as to a couple of thoughts. See, it was interesting when we first did this christening of this conference. So we kind of looked at many and finally zoomed on this RMIT, because I think it actually connects three things together. Ramanujan, mathematics and IT. And I was very personally happy because the only thing I have a little bit of a connection is I was born in the same street where Ramanujan was born. It's in actually two streets. The two sides of the street have two different names, but nonetheless it is the same street. And so it's kind of good to feel, and many of us always felt that Ramanujan had been neglected quite a bit. The whole of 60s and 70s we used to have strong feeling. But I think slowly he's getting possibly his recognition. And of course it also applies to the mathematics. The mathematics in this country itself has not got enough recognition, partly because we did not kind of communicate it well, did not document it well. And finally, of course, computing and IT. Okay, so I think one of the challenges for us, I think things are improving, but a lot of times we have to depend on people outside India to get Ramanujan his due place. Outside India to get the Indian mathematics. I don't know how many of you have noticed, because here is a person from MSR, I actually noticed it in Microsoft Museum in Seattle. So somewhere there is a nice mention about the numerals, okay. All of us know the current set of numerals which we use, 0 to 9, as what is called Arabic numerals. And apparently they went from India to Arabia, and of course Saudi Arabia today is known for very different things, but originally Arabia used to be scholars, okay, and a lot of mathematics scholars. And because it went from Arabia to rest of the world, it is known as Arabic numerals. And then there was a mention somewhere in the Microsoft Museum that in Arabia it is still called Hindu numerals. I actually visited Saudi Arabia and actually checked with people and figured out it is true. So in Arabia it is called Hindu numerals and rest of the world. But what happens is we have to get these numerals back through a very long circuit. I think that seems to be, and this is my request to all of you, the mathematicians in the room, okay? Somewhere I think we have to take some kind of effort. And one of the effort that is happening in the last few years is also on the larger front. Mathematics itself over a period of time has become less cool, because whether we like it or not these days, we still have to address the youngsters, the youngest stans of the world, the Gen Next of India, okay? So how do you make Ramanujan cool? How do you make mathematics cool? It is not to, in any sense, trivialize, I'm not talking of those things. But I think we need to somehow get them, okay? So my way of putting it is that, can we make some of these things also aspirational? Whether we like it or not, we live in a generation. In fact, one of my students put it kind of nicely. I didn't like it, but I know it is truth. Let me quote what my student said. Sir, generally good things are expensive, but our generation thinks if something is not expensive, it is not good. It's unfortunate, but it's a fact of life. So what is actually happening is aspirations have changed. I don't know how many of you noticed. Vishal Sikka, who took over as the CEO of Infosys, had made a nice statement. So can we shift the focus from Nach Gaye to mathematics? Okay. So I think somewhere along we should kind of make mathematics Ramanujan cool. I think it has to work both ways. One is sometimes we also have to make things little aspirational. Okay. See, today I think Bill Gates and Steve Jobs are aspirational for youngsters. Can Ramanujan also be aspirational? The fact that you could contribute so much sitting in such a small place with practically no formal training and still be able to kind of do it. So idea is we need an out-of-box thinking that you don't have to go to MIT and Harvard. I think we have great MIT educated people, 2 of them right here. It's good to have them. But not many will necessarily be able to go to MIT. And just because you did not go to MIT, it's not that you can't do great work. Okay, so how do we kind of rediscover this? Okay, I think what is important is to do great work. Okay, the place is secondary, but the first priority is for the good work. The second thing is something which is especially appeal to the broader computer scientists in this country. See, for long what happened was that, we are old timers, so you kind of seen the, I went to a school called Purdue University, which, there are lots of interesting claims which people make, right? So Purdue University's computer science department is supposed to be the first undergraduate computer science department in the United States. Okay, so very ways in which they do. But the reason why I am getting this across is that the whole of 60s and 70s and 80s, CS found the discrete mathematics was very useful. So discrete mathematics is taught a lot, discrete mathematics is used a lot, and so for a whole generation of students starting from, I would say, 80s onwards, okay, mathematics pretty much meant discrete mathematics. It has gone to the extent some of my very distinguished colleagues, okay, I have great respect for them. At the same time, I don't necessarily agree with them on one thing. They actually think continuous mathematics is not needed for computer scientists. Okay, which I think is very unfortunate. But I think both the discrete and continuous mathematics are as important to computing today. And so what I'm trying to say is that getting mathematics into the mainstream computing is also kind of important. Okay, so I just want you to kind of keep this, okay, and going further, okay, so a lot of times people, this country, we also have a very interesting tradition. We deify things, we make somebody into a god. What it means is we pretty much do nothing about it. So it is easy, at least Tamil Nadu, that's what they did, right? Somewhere I think they built a building or something like that for Ramanujan and just pretty much forgot about it. Okay, let us not do the same thing. I think we have to constantly rediscover. This is something which as a country we have done it extremely well. If you really look at the way the scriptures are, okay, so Bhagavad Gita was just not put at some place, worshipped and forgotten. So you will find century after century, okay, you will find a new interpretation of Gita. It happened with Ramanuja, it happened with Shankara, it happened with Madhva several centuries back, 6, 7, 8 centuries back. But even if you actually see in the recent time, there was interpretation by Sri Aurobindo, there was an interpretation by Tilak, okay, and a tradition goes on. So the question is, so similarly I think Ramanujan has to be reinterpreted, rediscovered, retold for generations of people. I think that is what you people are doing extremely well, and we are especially thankful to Professor Yogananda. He is one person who is very much part of RMIT in the last several years now. So keep doing a great job, keep inspiring people. And finally to you, the students, okay, and so take these things with a fair amount of seriousness. I think the only thing I will kind of conclude with what one of the IBM CEO, he used to be regularly visiting Bangalore, Sam Palmisano, who used to say, he said that, look, Sharagopan, we are kind of friends at some level. He used to say that, look, was referring to my generation. See, my generation, we are lucky that we can genuinely put our hand in the heart and say that we are leaving behind an India which was much better than the India we inherited. See, the India of 50s and 60s, the front page news was invariably famine, flood, poverty. Right? That is what the India we were born in. Okay. So looking back, so what Sam said was, how do you ensure that your children, your students will have the same satisfaction? Right? You should leave behind an India which is much better than the India which you inherited in 90s. But you should probably have the same kind of a feeling 40 years from now, when you will kind of time for you to hand over to the next generation, that the India will be much better in all its respects, intellectually, emotionally, psychologically, economically, and socially. Okay, and I am convinced that computing and IT will continue to play a major role, and to enrich computing and IT, mathematics will play a much major role. And I'm sure Prasanna will tell you, okay, what these simple things can actually tell you, and I'm sure that we will discover more of Ramanujan in the next 30 years than what we have.
Thank you so much to Professor Sadgopan. I think somewhere they both encapsulated exactly what we are trying to do with this conference, which is firstly bring mathematics into mainstream information technology, and at the same time honor someone like Ramanujan. So to get started off, I think we'll start with the first talk for the day. Professor C.S. Yogananda is Professor and Head of Department of Sri Jai Ramachandra College of Engineering. He's here all the way from Mysore, so big round of applause for that. So he's going to be speaking on Ramanujan and pi.
I thank IIIT-Bangalore for this another wonderful opportunity to come and talk about Ramanujan, mathematics, and the baffling situation for me in India. And excuse me if I sound nostalgic at sometimes, cynical at some point of times. Nostalgic because among the speakers I find that there were quite a few whom I know as I said, kids. Not exactly, but they were. Amit Deshpande was an Olympiad student, so he was in 11th standard when I first met him. And then another person who is going to speak tomorrow, Neeraj Kayal, is again one of the students from the Olympiad days. That is nostalgic. Cynical, you will see throughout the talk. Anyway, why? So the topic I chose is Ramanujan and pi. And of course, there are things about Ramanujan and about pi which I going to say. Okay, and yeah, what is this? Yeah, I found that the two personalities, if you can call pi a personality, share some very common traits. Both are mysterious. One still doesn't. At first, they were thought to be just irrational. Somebody thought Ramanujan just blabbering and all that, but then turned out that both are transcendental. So mathematically and psychologically. So I just, to make sure what I am talking about, I just put the English meaning of transcendental, because I thought many of here would be mathematicians, so they would know what transcendency in mathematics means. So actually I had to fish out this from the dictionary, because for me transcendental always meant not algebraic. So being beyond ordinary or common experience, thought, or just belief. So that's Ramanujan. And both have a tendency to show up in unsuspected places. Nobody thought Ramanujan would show up in Ramanujan graphs or this, that, or that. So information technology was something which, of course, Ramanujan hadn't heard of a computer. He himself was one, so he didn't realize what he was. And then both are inexhaustible sources of information, because so just as you keep computing the next digit of pi, you also start computing the next work of Ramanujan, which suddenly become relevant. That was the thing. So let me begin with the thing which is not very well known, but it is actually very interesting and elementary in some aspect. So Ramanujan, this thing, trust with pi, continued very early. So there is this beautiful problem of squaring the circle, which Greeks had started trying to do, and then realized that later, much later, the world realized that it cannot be done. A circle cannot be squared. Meaning you cannot, given a circle, you cannot draw a square whose area is same as the area of that circle. So that was, so the efforts, okay, you can't get the exact thing, but can you at least do a good approximation? And here is Ramanujan's, so which appeared in the Journal of the Indian Mathematical Society in 1930. It's a one-page paper. So let PQR be, you take a circle and let PR be a diameter, and H is the midpoint of PO, and T is the point of trisection of OR nearer R. Then you drop the perpendicular TQ and then place a chord RS, which is, so that is the aim in the construction. So you
can write on it.
Yeah, no, but writing, I just put a point out. So this point is the direction, and then TQ is the perpendicular, and then you place a chord RS, which is equal to TQ. So all this you can do ruler and compass, that's what you have to realize. Then you join this PS, and from T and O draw lines parallel to RS. And then you draw a perpendicular, rather tangent to the circle at P with PL equal to MN. This. And then you drop a chord here, place a chord PK, which is equal to PM. Then join PL, PK, RL, and this point C is such that RH and RC are the same. Yeah, cut off RC at RH. Then draw CD, which is parallel to KL. Okay. Then Ramanujan says this RD is approximately pi. Get it? Approximately pi.
Small question. I've forgotten all my geometry, but trisection, how would you trisect using ruler and compass? I've forgotten completely.
Yeah, there might be many ways of doing it. I'm thinking of parallel lines. See, what you do is, here you would draw, and then this is the one you have to trisect, and then mark any equal this thing, same here, and then join. Trisecting an angle is an impossible problem. Okay, and then as Ramanujan said, the square on RD will be equal to the area of the circle PQR, which meaning the R times the pi R squared. That is it. And this is very typical of Ramanujan. So then he goes and says, what is the approximation like? So he says, if the area of the circle be 1,40,000 square miles, then RD is greater than the true length by about an inch. That's the closeness of approximation. It's a brilliant piece of thing by Ramanujan. But you might be curious how pi comes in. So it's strange. Actually, it does not come in a very direct way. There is no this thing saying that this is equal to pi and then there is and then you say this is. What Ramanujan has done is that you do this and this RD you compute. You can now compute because you know that T is a point of trisection, H is a midpoint of PO. Using these two, this is a one-page paper of Ramanujan. So, in fact, I can show you that paper of Ramanujan. Yeah, a one-page paper of Ramanujan, and that is all there is. All very simple mathematics. You can go home today evening and then check it out, and just high school geometry. And the thing is, finally, the thing is RD is equal to D by 2, that root of 350 by 113. The thing is, root 355 by 113 approximate. 350 by 113 approximates pi very, very closely, and that is the connection. So it is not that he gets pi somehow. He gets a very good approximation to pi and then constructs that. And like most work Ramanujan, I will have an opportunity later in the day also. This work is also impossible to duplicate. I would not say impossible, as Phantom would say, difficult but not impossible. So maybe, but nobody has found. So if one wants to say, okay, now I want to do another approximation of squaring the circle, it's not very clear how to go about it, because as I said, this is not a connection mathematically brought somewhere. It is. So maybe someday somebody will find other. So it's very curious and very beautiful. So that's Ramanujan for you. He just goes on and like this. I don't know how many he had and how many he was able to publish. So we now come to Srinivas Ramanujan's contribution to the computation of the digits of pi. So to put the matter in perspective, in 1874, William Shanks took 15 years to compute pi to 527 places. He actually climbed more, but then in the later block many mistakes were found, but up to 527 it was neat. In 2013, Shigeru Kondo, Japanese mathematician, took 94 days. Of course, a lot of computer effort was involved to compute the value of pi to more than 12 trillion places. I think that's about the record now. 12 trillion places. So that's the. So the approximations of pi. So after 1950, you see that it starts increasing. I think that is the first increase is due to computers. So that is it. Two things were responsible for this phenomenal development in less than 100 years. One was Srinivasa Ramanujan and high performance computer, and in that order. So Ramanujan first and then the high. So in 19 turns, at that decade, Srinivasa Ramanujan had found several rapidly converging infinite series for pi. Just better. They were in that famous letter which he wrote to Hardy. And they could compute pi to 8 decimal places with every term. Every one term you take, you will get 8 further places. Like that. Since the 80s, his series have become the basis for the fastest algorithms used by Kanada, Chudnovsky brothers, David and Gregory, and others to compute pi. Yeah, another curious connection is that there are a lot of brothers, a couple of brothers at least. The Chudnovsky brothers, David and Gregory, and the same thing has also another pair of brothers, Bovine, Peter and Jonathan. Peter and Jonathan Bovine proved this series. Ramanujan had listed, and many, here is an example of a series for 1 by pi based on elliptic integrals, and among the early formulas of Ramanujan. Note that k factorial to the power 4 in the denominator, which is responsible for the fast convergence. When Gaspar used it in 1985, they were not sure of the series. It had been given by Ramanujan, but nobody had proved it. So that proof came later, and that proof and many other series modifications, etc., were by another pair of brothers, Peter and Jonathan Bovine. And then, Gaspar used this series in 1985 for the computation of 17 million digits of pi. And in some sense, that was a computational proof of the validity of that formula. So each term here adds 8 decimal places.
Just one. How do you know that it is correct with the 17 million? Is there any way of validating it?
No, actually it was a circular argument. So that's why I said it was in quotes. Nobody claimed it as a proof. But people write it and then write in the proof of that because 17. Because this was the first time they did. And it agreed with the first, whatever was known till then.
But now this is proved actually.
The series is proved. And many more have been. Then Chudnovsky found a following variant. Actually, these things series come up in what is known as the class number formula relations for quadratic fields. So the Ramanujan formula involved a real quadratic field with root 58. And then Chudnovsky brothers, they found a following variant. And here you have k factorial equivalent. The numbers are big here. There's a big number in the denominator to the raised to the power 3k. Okay. And each term here adds 14 decimal places. And this Chudnovsky's brothers, the story is very interesting. They used this in 1994 to calculate 4 billion digits of pi. And they did not do it in air-conditioned laboratories with NSF funding and huge infrastructure and all. They achieved this magnificent feat working on a homemade supercomputer built in Gregory's apartment out of parts ordered via mail. Yes. And the story of this computation is told in the New Yorker, the magazine in US, and it's a very, very interesting story. I would like you people to go and read it. It's less mathematical, a lot of this thing. For example, it starts off with the description of the apartment, Gregory's apartment. Gregory is the older brother, David is the younger, and Gregory suffers from a disease which he cannot see light for a long time. His eyes burn and his muscles, atrophied muscles, etc. So he always constantly wears socks and moves around. They did not have money because they did not have good position. Gregory is actually the better mathematician. So many good universities were willing to offer job to Gregory Chudnovsky when they migrated from Russia. They spent 6 months in Paris and then they shifted to States. But then Gregory had that because he could not work alone because of his illness, etc. And he had a collaboration with his brother. His condition was that if the university offers job to both, they will accept. So good university wanted only one, but not the other, so they had to move. Finally, they settled down in some thing, so they did not have too much money going with them, and therefore they could not get an apartment in a very nice place, so they had to in a fairly downtown, some dingy place, where the storyteller tells us that not too long before her visit, a corpse was found on the apartment building next. So, I mean, that was the kind of shady neighborhood in which Chudnovsky's apartment. And Gregory Chudnovsky, David lived a little away from that, and he would come here. And this description of the apartment is all there. It's not great air conditioning, and because of this enormous computer, that parallel processing they had, very always hot, they could not be, and stacks of papers strewn all around. First they worked connecting to the Cray computer, but then that had problems and they crashed it several times, so people objected to their using that. So they decided to build. Okay, so later in the talk I have this thing when I talk about this again. So I will give the reference at the end, and it's worth reading this story of Chudnovsky's, because usually it's thought that maybe one needs huge funding and huge infrastructure to do science and mathematics. It's actually the necessity is the mother of invention. You first find necessity and then other things keep coming. You don't apply for funding and then say, I want to compute 4 billion digits of pi. Your focus is 4 billion digits of pi, and then however you can get there, you get there. Usually it so happens that you apply for funding, you get the funding, but then you have forgotten what you wanted the funding for, and then you use it for something else. This and many such series given by Ramanujan were proved in 1987, the centenary year. In fact, it was not a coincidence. Borwein had it, and then they decided to, another pair of brothers, Jonathan and Peter Borwein, and they continued in the same vein. And once it was a class number relation, now it's a game actually. You can take any real quadratic field, find its class number, and use the class number formula to get a series for pi. So if that is a new one, you can start computing many more. So they continued in the same way, and here, I mean, in contrast to the frightening looking series earlier, this is a iterative formula, so which can be programmed into. So it's a naught and y naught like that, and then iteration, this thing for yk plus 1, and this. Then ak converges to 1 over pi, and each iteration quadruples the number of digits of correct digits of pi. So 21 iterates produce an algebraic number that coincides with pi to well more than 6 trillion places.
How do you do the 1 over 4? How do you raise this, and what is the approximation to the quadratic here, 4th root?
Yeah, they are the usual standard ones. You can key in and whatever is the real floating point arithmetic thing which is there.
Okay, so there is no, okay. Is there something where a formula where you don't have anything more, any such things as of now?
No, radicals are the simplest thing you can. See, well, not many may realize, because there are students here and I teach a lot of engineering students. I want to reiterate that no matter how much mathematics progress or whatever we can do, the fundamental operations we can do have not increased. It is still addition, subtraction, multiplication and division. So no matter what you invent later in life, modular forms, elliptic curves, cohomologies, etc., when you want to compute, you have to bring everything to these four. Even square root extraction you cannot do just like that. You have to give a formula in terms of addition and subtraction and multiplication. There is no other way. So all these formulas. So the simplest thing is that, and you have to.
But is there a formula they have which is radical free?
No, there isn't. So the radicals and then this algebraic numbers. I mean, if you compare the previous one and this of course looks radical free, but then how do you compute this? See, the thing is you take a term k equal to 20 and start putting in values, etc., then it is going to take an enormous time. So you have to convert it into a nice this thing, and the Bovine brothers did this. This AK converges, and this is the this is my question. Why can't these things be done in India? What is lacking? Nothing is lacking. Simple thing as those formulas are there. Why don't somebody get interested and plug those things in and get the series out? This, for some strange reason, I have not been able to answer completely correctly. So let me tell you, and it's not that I just see this paper and then I tell you why don't you do this, etc., the preacher. I have been with the Olympiad movement, so Amit Deshpande is here, who was part of this thing. And I have been ever since then trying to ask this question. And if they have been asked and made to focus, they have done. They have come up with things. One example I have is that once I asked the Olympiad kids, the problem is very simple mathematical. Can you find a block of 2000 consecutive integers, which that block should have exactly 100 primes in that. Can you find a block of 2000 integers with exactly 100 primes in them? So mathematically this is very simple to check out. So Olympiad kids give out the answer in 3-4 minutes, because I will give you a very simple. If you take the first block of 2000 integers, 1 to 2000, there are more than 100 primes, because 1 to 1000 itself is some 167 or something. And then you can later find a block with no primes in them, starting from 2001 factorial plus 2, 2001 factorial plus 3, 2001 factorial plus 4, etc. If you go right up to 2000, every number there is composite because of 2001 factorial, whatever you add. So now you have a block with more than 100, you have a block with no primes, so you keep shifting from that as you pick up 1 prime each, and then stop when you get 100 primes. So problem is done. So then I told students, okay, but I want to see that block. I want to see that block with exactly to the, you tell me this is the starting number, this is the end number, and these are the 100 primes. This is a challenge we can. So that year the camp was in Bombay. Suchari Sarkar was junior to you, much junior. So Suchari Sarkar got that 2 days, 3 days. I told them, you can use whatever computers are available in this. I knew kids were he was in 11th standard. They already knew how to handle computer and knew some programming and basic programming. So he did this. See, the challenge here is, if you start from that end, 2001 factorial is a very huge number. So more than 5000 digits. So if you try to look at that and then use this technique of moving one by one, step by step, then it becomes a difficult thing. And therefore that is where the computational challenge lies. And then so he used some ingenious way that way and found the block. So that's what I'm saying. All that was needed was this question to be asked. Whether you can. And in fact, I made it as a general this thing that we could do that kind of thing. In mathematics, it happens. In geometry, you are given certain hypothesis and data, and then asked to prove something. Given this, do this, like Ramanujan said, do all this, and then show that RD is very close to pi or something. But the question is, mathematically you prove everything, but finally you have to check whether such a thing actually exists. So that kind of thing is what really will force people to start doing things. As I said, this problem of block of 2000 with exactly 100 prime is a question which mathematically is trivial, but then when you try to do computation, it is. So there is this old school of, then defining this, there are two schools. One is, it says, like, for example, in the definition of continuity, for every epsilon positive, there exists a delta. Another school which says for every epsilon positive, we can find a delta. So it is, we can find and there exists. These are two different schools of thought. There exists just says it exists, difficult to. Whereas we can find are what are known as constructivists. In terms of epsilon, the given epsilon and the function, they actually give a formula for the delta. They are existentialists and constructionists. That is the two schools. And we need to shift. And most of the times, in spite of the fact that Ramanujan has been here for such a long time and this kind of beautiful formulas were there in the paper since 1920, we have not been doing anything. So this is actually surprising, and I would be happy if the younger and the older audience here share with me what they think is the reason. What is it that is preventing people from actually going ahead, taking something like this and computing? Put k equal to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Nothing more than that. At least that has to be done. I am surprised why people, they say, okay, this is good, looks nice or looks frightening depending on what this thing is, and then go ahead. So, and as I pointed out in the Chudnovsky tale, it is not as if you need huge kind of thing. I mean, the kind of supercomputer which they built can be done today by, I would say, students who are pursuing the PhD. Okay, so I have a few things on where these things are going wrong in India. So, and then we can, of course, discuss on that. That's my personal view. And I back it with, as I said, experience of 17 years in the Olympiad level trying to infuse. And I would say to some extent I was successful. Yeah, Amit is here because he wanted to pursue mathematics and it was not very easy. Yeah, and these things hang by a very close, very thin thread. So, since he's here, it's not anything embarrassing or something, but I can tell that story. He wanted to pursue mathematics, but he had got in BITS Pilani, so people around him were keen that he goes there and not to CMI. But luckily, it so happened at the same time, there was a student in Bangalore, Shashank. So he had got a good rank and he had got admission in CMI. But he had also got admission in BITS Pilani. And his father wanted to allow Shashank to pursue mathematics, which was his first love. But then his mother wouldn't hear of that. To the extent that my father came and talked to me, but the mother refused to meet me. By that time, my persuasive powers had been quite legendary. So she said, if I meet this guy, maybe my son will end up. So she refused to meet me. And then, luckily for Amit, when Amit went to BITS Pilani, Shashank was already there. So Shashank told this Amit, I have succumbed to my mother's force and be here. It's the wrong place, don't ever get here. They were meeting for the first time. But both had got admission in CMI, and there was this guy who was already there. He said, I will testify to whatever extent your mother, father, whoever needs, don't get in here, go back to CMI. And Amit decided he could. I'm sure he has no regrets about that. So that's the kind of thing. And okay, I mean, to tell something about my persuasive powers, it was very strange also, because another guy who is again his senior, he is now a faculty in IISER, Mohalli. So he was interested in pursuing math. The same thing. His parents said, no, IIT. So, IIT. You got some 800 rank, so you end up in one of the IIT. Then when I was in Delhi, he said, yeah, what's the guy's name? He was huh? Yashwanidhi Pandey. He was senior, right?
My bad.
Your batch. Ah, so same batch, yeah. So Yashwanidhi Pandey and Yashwanidhi said, sir, I want to study mathematics, but my father is forcing me. So when you are in Delhi, can my parents meet you? I said, okay, fine, let's meet. And they met, and after this thing was over, friends who were there on the team were outside waiting eagerly to see the outcome of this great discussion. And Yash went and told them, he was very disappointed. He said the conversation went in a very wrong way. And now it looks like my parents have convinced Yogananda that mathematics is not a good subject to pursue. Then the Yogananda sir hardly talked, and it was mostly my father who held forth. So Yashanidhi was very disappointed. He said, what a big letdown, I thought he would help me. But when they reached home, he was in for a surprise. His father over dinner told him, okay, go and join CMI. So I was delighted. And he later analyzed, and then he just see what he realized later was, he told me, he said, so by allowing my father to talk, you made him empty all the apprehensions he had about it, and you not answering any of them showed that they don't actually exist. So finally he was convinced to let him go into mathematics, and he did, and Yash is a faculty in IISER Mohali today. So these are very personal recollections. And another thing which I would say, the educational situation in India, which is what is primarily responsible. And these 17 years of experience with these kids and their wanting to pursue mathematics and their difficulty, etc., made me realize, and then I shifted to the engineering college in Mysore in 2005. First went on leave from TIFR, and I decided to stay there, and that's what I want. See, what is happening in India is we have completely compartmentalized everything. So which is what has broken down whatever possibly can be done. So the Neeraj Kyle example will help focus on that kind of thing. See, what's happening is, unfortunately, even people of the stature of C.N.R. Rao keep playing engineers against mathematicians, scientists. It is not correct. He says students, all good students go to engineering and medicine, no good student come to science. I don't see why engineering is not science. For me, if you say what science is, what it stands for, engineering has all that aspects. I don't see why engineering has to be played against science. First of all, if you look at the overall student population, youth population, in that population who go to undergraduate studies, all the statistics are up on the web. And then if you look at the people who actually go to either science, engineering or mathematics, that's actually a fairly small fraction. Now, does anyone have an idea of how many of the undergraduate students in India may be pursuing either science, engineering or medicine? Any guesses? What percentage? It's definitely...
Medicine may be 30,000 per year.
No, percentage-wise. Percentage-wise, the number of students studying in undergraduate college and these. Yeah, you will be surprised. I mean, it's not a huge number at all. So that's a small thing. And there you go and then again divide. Engineers, doctors, physicists, chemists, mathematicians. And then of course in engineering go and divide further again. Civil, computer science, electrical, this, that, etc., etc. And that is where the problem lies. So the engineering colleges, so they said all good students go to engineering colleges. So then I decided, then I told people that, okay, if you think good students are all going there and not good students are coming to science, Then another thing you could do is to go to the engineering colleges and teach there. So then you can teach better mathematics, better physics, and make them better mathematicians, better engineers. So you have to walk the talk. So I did. So I'm very happy that I did. I'll tell you, the very first year I went there, I gave some extra lectures in number 3 outside the class hours, 6 to 7, 7:30 or something. Very few, 2 or 3 per week, and for 4 or 5 weeks I just told them about the search engine because I wanted to get them to it, and then told them about this factorization. And at the end of that, a 4th semester student implemented quadratic sieve. He did not know most of the things he was talking about. But actually that's how we live our life. We don't understand all the things we talk about. We say we use computers, and if somebody asks about exactly what we know about computers, it would be very, very little. If they open up and say, okay, what is the RAM here? You keep saying, what is ROM? We will not know anything. But then we know what it stands for, and we know what we want out of it. That much we have. We know some working rules for anything, and that is all what we require. And then he was able to. So 50, 60 digit numbers he could easily factorize. And the good thing about that was, and then he put it on the Google this page. And then when he applied abroad for this thing, he referred to that, so he got admission in a good place. So he is doing mathematics in a US university. Okay. And then the optical character recognition was another subject which came from the engineering field, which again was able to do. And then see, I'll outline the situation. What is happening is, let me take Indians of Science and SJCE for example. The 2 places where I have a lot of familiarity because I spent 13 years here and 7 years there. In IISc, for example, our very senior colleague, Prof. Madhavan, who has a computational laboratory, had 2 students at that time who were working on factorization. And then, so anybody working on factorization will also have access to test out their things. So if they devise an algorithm, they have to implement that and test out. The problem for these 2 students who were working on that was that they had to maintain the lab, which means keep all these computers up and running, which is enormous amount of work, as you realize. To keep updating the packages, the various things from everywhere, from the operating system to the algorithms which they use. They also keep getting updated, you have to, etc. And whenever there is a power maintenance thing, they have to take backups and keep the system, then go back, etc. They also have to do their mathematical computations and then try to implement. So just 2 of them trying to do all these things in their personal research work which they want to focus on gets very, very limited attention. In fact, when I took this batch of students from JCE to IISc to show some of this lab, at that time they said, I'm very sorry sir, because of power maintenance it is shut down for 1 week. We are taking backups, so I can show you some very small things on my personal computer. That was the kind of situation. So this is where the problem is. Whereas look at an engineering college like JCE, if I have a lab, there is no problem for me to maintain the OS level. I mean, every time Ubuntu or someone upgrades this thing, there would be any number of kids in the first year who would love to do just that. They don't understand anything. You just say, I have this lab and I want to make sure that all these are up to date. They would be. And the student strength is, they admit 900 students every year. So of this, even if you say 5% is about 40, more than 40 students would be interested in maintaining this. And there would be advanced students. I mean, these people who first start, maybe some of them start getting interested in the finer aspects of it. Would let's say, they will say, okay, we will also start installing packages, because maintaining a supercomputer by installing all these packages is not. You have this hierarchy of people who would like to do lots of things, and therefore the people who are doing research can concentrate on the research. That's the point. So actually by breaking down, we have made sure that nobody works. Students in engineering colleges don't have people who can tell them what they have to do, because anybody who writes couple of decent papers in decent journals in India can be taken and isolated. in one of the IITs or ISERs, and we are bringing up more and more such institutions. And that, I think, is a retrograde step, contrary to what people may generally think. Bringing 5 more ISERs, etc., in my opinion, harms science more than it promotes science. I actually compare it to growing potted plants. It is not very difficult to simulate an environment, and if students do, actually you can have 2 pots and then plant apple trees, simulate a complete environment as in Kashmir in a room in IIIT, and show that you actually can grow apples. But that doesn't do anything. If you really think you have to do something, you have to actually go out, buy a couple of acres, plant apple trees there, and then show that actually you can grow some 100 kgs of apple. Our research by institutions such as TIFR or Math Science or even IITs is of that kind, pots. We have shown, we have put 3 or 4 mathematicians in TIFR, given neat environment, and show that they can produce papers in annals of mathematics. But that's not the point. So that is why these things cannot be done in India. If you have to, you have to go. So the problems for engineering colleges is that they don't have people who do good science there, and therefore they don't have spokesmen there. I'll tell you how they get relegated to the background. Let's take mathematics. The older persons here who may have studied engineering, are there any? And you didn't study engineering, physics you studied, so you studied engineering. Did you have all years mathematics course in your? By that time it had. First day when they introduced engineering, it was 5-year course, and all 5 years they had mathematics as a subject. Then they started getting, engineering became 4 years, and 1 year the last was all the science courses were the ones which were cut down. Then it became only up to the first 3 years. Then it started getting delegated. Now only 2 years. For some luck, fortunately, now 2 years has survived. And that's the problem. And when they do this, there is nobody who can talk back and say, no, it is required. You need mathematics right till the end. And one reason why when they come to MTech or when they go to industry, they are underprepared is because of this one fact. I am saying it not because I am a mathematician, but that's what the argument I keep making in my college. When we became autonomous, we tried to improve the situation. For example, E&C has 6 semesters of mathematics, and they even have optionals in their 8th and 7th and 8th semester. And that does do good to them. So we have had many good gate ranks, many people going into research in states and all that. And good thing was that many of them get assistantships in the maths department, which they are happy about. So it's all because of that maths background. So if the industry finds students of engineering colleges underprepared, or if the MTech students, in fact that was one of the starting reasons for me to think of shifting to an undergraduate college, because I tried to speak to MTech kids who come here and found their mathematical background fairly weak. I said, my goodness, if this is what is happening, then maybe one should go there and try to repair things there. And that's it. So any good person who has some mathematics or physics, chemistry is taken away in one of these. So these engineering colleges, which are actually a fairly large number, are left without people for, and there are no spokesmen. So if people ask, why do you want mathematics here? Let's remove it. Why do you want it in this 4th year? Let's take it off. There is nobody who is going to say, no, this is why it is required. I had to face arguments of that kind. So I tell mathematics in engineering college has twofold purpose. One is to, as a language of the engineering sciences, to help students understand what mathematics they need to understand their engineering. And then another aspect is the problem solving thing which you have to teach them. Any discipline in human is about problem solving. Politics, sociology, economics, maths, physics, chemistry. And problem solving, the best way to teach that process of problem solving, mathematics, because it's a purely man-made universe, and you can state problems nicely and also show how one goes about solving them. It is. So in this connection, you might be curious to know, that Abraham Lincoln actually would suggest a course on Euclidean geometry to people who would work under him. It might be secretary, dispatch clerk, or whatever. He suggested that if White House employed them, he would suggest that, do they know Euclidean geometry or something like that. So people who knew geometry had a slight edge with Abraham Lincoln. So he would employ them because he apparently kept on telling, it orders your mind, makes you think precisely and along correct line. So that's the point. So I keep telling this, and therefore I have. So to an engineering colleague who said, no, we don't run Laplace transforms even. I said Laplace transform, more than the definition, there are lots of things behind it. So I can't just define Laplace transforms and tell you, okay, you go ahead. No, he kept. So I told him, in that case, you do this. Whenever in the class you are going to use Laplace transform, those 5 minutes you just call me, I'll come define my Laplace transform and go away. You continue your lecture. So by Laplace transform, we don't mean just the definition. There's a whole thing about it, why, etc., which is what the kids want to know. The students, we have to be taught that. And so they have now agreed, and the electronics department agreed that they need mathematics for a longer time than that. These things, and no scientific, for example, if you look at the scientific advisory committee of the Prime Minister, it involves very few technologies, which is actually the sorry state of affairs. So I don't know how to correct these things the best way. So in fact, I have been known for a very strong statement I make about an institution which I served for some time. So excuse me if I hurt people here. Among the blunders of independent India, I count TIFR. That is one of the biggest blunders we made in India. By that, we isolated things and made sure that neither mathematics survives nor engineering survives. We completely. And what we did by this one example was we gave politicians, the government, I would say government, not politicians, government, an easy way of pacifying people. You want to improve science? Okay, great. Have 5 more TIFRs. Fund allocation, 500 crores. 5 TIF. It's easy for them to do. But that is not what we should be doing. We should be strengthening the existing universities. That's how we have. And I don't see it coming in any way. So many people said IITs, but that again to a very small extent, because the problems are of a slightly different kind. Again, the question is of isolation. Even though mathematics and physics appear in a fairly larger departmental this thing in IITs than in engineering colleges, there again it's compartmentalized. You don't. Actually, those who are interested in mathematics and have already committed would sort of go and seek courses there than they being a part of the general routine. Okay. So, yeah, I think I'm nearing my time. So, I'm sorry if I have taken you away from Ramanujans, but if you want Ramanujans, if you want people to do these things, this is what we have to do. We have to make people, and engineering colleges are very good for this. They are kids who are just out of school, 12th standard, and you throw anything at them. For example, you just give this series and say, okay, assignment, compute 5 terms and give me the solution. I'm quite sure 80% of them will do, or 50% will do, and the remaining 50% will copy, which is fine. But then you will get somebody to do. So when they do 5 terms, somebody thinks of, okay, I want to do 50 terms, how do I go about it? And that's when actually things start happening. So believe me, I have had occasions to mention Ramanujan's name in my courses. It's not very difficult. They have been able to see why his name. Okay, so that we have to do. And now just to end, before I want a few of, some by way of discussion, some comments from you. Just want to relate it to a philosophical thing, because it started off and Professor Shedagopan is deeply into philosophy, so I can't help mentioning those things. You see, there is this thing saying that what is the use of computing pi? It does not help me understand mathematics more. But then even in philosophy you have a such thing. What is the point in performing certain rituals which you are supposed to perform? I don't see how these things lead. I don't see why giving food to 3-4 Brahmins here will please my father in the heaven who died 10 years ago. This kind of thing. But these rituals, there, the philosophical substantiation of those things is that what is called Chitta Shuddhi. It cleans and prepares your mind for higher things. And I would say a similar thing about this. What is the point in knowing for computing 500 digits of pi? You might not benefit from it to any extent, but it clears your mind and makes it receptive to higher learning. So these things you might say, okay, 500, then you might have to, then you might get a new idea. So I would say this solving problems and doing these computations kind is the same as that of rituals in religious thing. Philosophy is very clear about that. They say none of this will actually give you what you want at the end. But this is just to discipline and keep your mind in a position so that it is receptive when higher knowledge comes to you. Like army people, it's not that they are going to fight with their hands, but that doesn't prevent them from keeping exercising regularly. Okay, so all these things are necessary and we need to. And of course, pi, yeah, for those who are keen, the lot of digits are totally useless in the real sense of the word. Because even while designing Mars probes or things which go out of space where enormous accuracy is required, because you make a small mistake of 1,000th of a millimeter and you miss the moon by few lakh miles. So instead of going to moon, you will end up somewhere else. So even that kind of thing, about 100 digits of pi are more than sufficient. I don't know the exact number, but some such number like that is enough to compute the accuracy of the diameter of the to within a proton diameter. So I think that is the kind of accuracy. So that is not required. Okay, and also another nice thing is people don't know that actually pi is very, very useful in daily life without knowing. So there was this person, journalist, who came to me when I was in IISc, because at that time there is a piece of news in the paper saying that 3.14 etc. is not the actual value of pi, it is 3.13 something. Somebody said, and it's an exact value. So this newspaper people came and asked me, so what do you think this value, what revolution will it create in physics and mathematics if it is not 3.14 but it is 3.13 etc. He said actually it doesn't create any revolutions in maths or physics because we always use pi. We don't say 3.13. Area of pi is pi r squared, so it continues to be pi r squared whether the value of his pi is what this or that. And Planck's constant etc., those things will stay as they are. No problem, because we always use pi there. We have not used the value of pi. But I said your civil engineers and contractors will not accept that new value. She was surprised. I said, why would civil engineers and contractors be worried about the value of pi? Yeah, for those of you who may not be knowing it, the value of pi has to be declared by every government. Government of India should have declared a value of pi. See, they suddenly decide to redo the golden plating of the Amritsar Golden Temple and invite tenders. Value of pi is very crucial. So usually that is the procedure. The contractor computes and then says, this is the amount of gold I have used. So the engineers have to certify. They will compute again. There will be a difference. The contractor will use a higher value of pi to compute. The engineers will use a lower value of compute. So naturally they end up in court, and court has to decide. So for all practical purposes, the government, every government has to declare a value of pi. So it's important. It's not a totally this thing. But then one doesn't need digits of million digits, because that is. So it is exactly the same kind of philosophical stand. You do these rituals, but there are people who without doing these rituals actually become grannies. Similarly here, Lamthadi like Ramanujan, who can freely do things, etc. And the other aspect of Ramanujan work, again I will be talking in a later talk. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for that opening talk, sir. It was really insightful of you.